Don't forget to support me with a like and a subscription. And here we go. Stop me at the previous part of it, where Chris was temporarily assigned to the academy because his director doubted him, his abilities, and his students. As soon as they found out, they decided to take action. As a result, they said they wouldn't allow their teacher, Chris, to be expelled. Afterwards, Chris accidentally met his students, who were undergoing a very powerful treatment, and they admired Chris and his personality. Duke Sheriff went with them, talked to the director, and convinced her. Chris discovered that the academy and the present Chris, but he was surprised that Angelina was terrified of her father while he was addressing her and confronting her with the truth. He knew that she is actually a boy named Dante who took his sister Angelina's place after her disappearance. Duke Sheriff requested his help in the competition in exchange for searching for the real Angelina to save her. The events continue with Dante, who is shocked by Chris's words. Chris promised him that he would free his sister and that he knew her location through his vision, making it an easy matter. At that exact moment, the system quest appeared before him, informing him that he had 14 days left to save Angelina or else he would die. Chris said this was a suitable time to deal with their group using the prize from the Academy's internal championship. Every year, they used to compete separately, and the prize in the competition is a crystal infused with a magical flame which serves as their symbol of victory. Chris says he needs this crystal for the real Angelina, and winning the competition seemed simple. But there was a problem. Afterwards, he went to his classroom and reminded them that everyone knows the first term exam is a portal. Then he struck the desk with both hands and announced with astonishment that this time all years would compete against each other, not each year separately like before. The matter used to be easy, but now it has become harder. The whole issue is not just a challenge. He remembered the promise he made to Duke Sheriff during the parents' meeting, that if they won, he would find Angelina. But there was a condition: the Duke had to free Dante. He still remembered the Duke's skepticism when he asked him, "How can I trust you?" This echoed in his mind, and Chris said that he never makes promises he doesn't intend to keep. Chris was calm on the outside, but internally he was battling with himself. They were supposed to face powerful opponents from their own age group, but time ran out quickly. Despite their skills, defeating students from the older years was unrealistic. Micah said it didn't matter and declared that they would give it everything they had if it meant standing by their teacher. Chris was firm and told them there was no turning back. Angelina witnessed their newfound determination to win and that they had no second option. From afar, Chris observed them and saw how desperate Dante was, pushing himself hard due to the pressure. However, one question haunted him: could he really turn these students into heroes in such a short amount of time? He got annoyed as soon as he saw Dulce. Normally this year, Dulce would be annoying as usual, but she was stressed. Nika noticed this too, called out to her, and asked her to calm Angelina down. When there was no response from her, he asked why he felt like she wasn't okay or if she was sick. Finally, Dulce spoke, her voice trembling as she said that every year during this season, a ghost appears in the academy. Nika got annoyed and asked what she was talking about, not understanding. Dulce continued to tell him that there are stories about students who died during past championships. Chris's expression changed instantly, and he said this was a problem. If Dulce was talking about ghosts, it meant only one thing: her twin was in danger. After a few days, we see the students training in the practice field. Nika was on his knees, exhausted, unable to continue, and saying he needed a break. Angelina's voice was sharp and freezing, telling him he hadn't even reached the halfway mark. Bella was tired too, saying this training was insane, she couldn't continue. And furthermore, Dulce hadn't shown up for days. Angelina strictly ordered them to endure, telling them that Dulce's absence had nothing to do with their efforts. Chris stood to the side, observing them and saying that Dulce being absent from training made no sense, as they needed a full team of 7 for this championship, and he couldn't afford any missing students. Dante was thinking about what was happening, saying that if something happened, Dulce's twin could be broken. He remembered seeing Dulce walking near the academy a while ago and wondered if she was looking for something. In an instant, we cut to Dulce, who was searching near the river. Her hair was soaked from the rain, her body was shivering, and her voice was broken as she spoke in this storm, calling out to Diana, asking her, "Where are you?" Chris reached the place while Dante watched her in silence. Chris's gaze became very sharp, and he said that the rumors were true. He realized that Diana was Dulce's twin sister and that she didn't simply disappear. She vanished without a trace. The twins, or these two, were among the companion geniuses of their human generation. Diana, the elder, was declared dead 5 years ago, but Chris had a vision that her soul was still trapped in this world and that she had been staying next to Dulce ever since. We see Dulce standing there crying, calling out to Diana, asking her where she was. Chris observed her and said that most of his students carry wounds they never talk about, and they have issues and ghosts from their past. He knew he had to face these ghosts one by one. He stepped forward and held Dulce's arms. His voice was perfect as he asked her to explain. Dulce listened to him, looking surprised, and said she didn't think he would leave the training to find her, and that she didn't know he would care this way. His expression remained unchanged, and he asked her to explain the situation to him completely, stating that this matter wasn't just about her. She was surprised and asked, "If it's not for me, then for whom?" Chris replied, telling her that she had lost Diana's soul, and asked her where she lost it. Dulce was shocked by his knowledge. Afterwards, she knew and said she always thought he was a strange person, but she didn't expect him to sense her presence. Chris didn't reply. In reality, he didn't sense anything, he just knew from the original novel. In that story, Dulce loved the hero Michael very much and would tell him everything. Before Diana's death, she had sealed her sister's soul inside a high-tier magic crystal, which allowed Diana's soul to remain tied to this world. But this matter came with a price. Diana couldn't wander far from Dulce, and no one could see her. Losing the stone meant she would be gone forever. Dulce explained to him in terror that when she woke up, it had disappeared from in front of her and she searched everywhere. Because of this, her magic was cut exactly in half and she was barely holding herself together. Chris thought to himself that a part of him wanted to let her rest, but that luxury no longer existed and he had to return Diana to her sister. Therefore, the time had not yet come and this matter had to be resolved quickly. He asked her to follow him to the end, which became her final destination. This was the last place Dulce visited. To Chris, this glowing meant only one thing: the soul stone hadn't just disappeared. It had been consumed. Chris laughed craftily and said, "Whoever ate it will make excellent training for my students." They went to the valley. Nika was annoyed and said, "Why are we wasting our time here? This place has nothing useful." Angelina replied, asking him to stop being annoying because the teacher was the one who requested them to be here. Bella looked at Dulce, feeling surprised, and asked if she was okay. Dulce's face was pale, and her shoulders were trembling. She knew what was waiting for them. Chris approached a lake and asked them if everyone was ready. Suddenly, the lake exploded, and a creeping monster emerged from its depths, screeching dreadfully. Its target was massive, its body was bloated and unnaturally twisted, and black acid was spewing from its mouth. It was a strange creature. Bella fell under its psychological influence. Angelina took command immediately, telling them that its breath is acidic and that she would use long-range magic. She ordered Nika and Bella to steady the shields. Only Dulce wasn't moving. Angelina noticed this. It was the perfect moment for her water magic from afar, but she stood frozen. Chris's voice cut through the chaos, asking Dulce, "Are you planning to run away again?" She breathed heavily, remembering the day with the magic stone when she stood frozen and didn't move. But this wasn't training. This was real, a life and death situation. The monster suddenly raised its head and began to speak, uttering distorted words. Dulce went silent. That voice was the actual voice of her sister, Diana. What was in front of her was Diana's soul. The covenant wasn't strange. This was the last remaining piece of her sister. Finally, she decided to face the monster. Chris was horrified by her terror. In the original novel, it said Diana was dead. Nika spoke to Michael, saying she had turned into a monster, but she was human, and as long as she was human, the mage tried to take her soul stone for research. That's why Dulce fled here. Chris's voice rang in Dulce's ear, asking her to remember that the monster before her is not her sister. Diana was human. And if she could use magic, what would she be other than human? Dulce trembled, started crying, and told him that he was very cruel, and that she always wanted to hear those words, but he had to say them now. She began using her magic, unleashing a water spear, and apologized to her group for involving them in such a matter, promising to return the favor. With a wave of her hand, the water spear shot forward and blasted the gathering monsters. Chris watched, and there was no doubt that his students were improving every day and that they would win this championship. The next morning, Chris was on his couch, saying that fending off the monsters certainly increased their chances in the student championship. They suffered, but in the end, they defeated the monster. He noticed that this monster dropped pure magic stones, which was likely the work of the mysterious man he met. He was definitely the one who did all of this. Chris said he gathered these stones and distributed them to his students, telling them to swallow them, as they would be useful even if they tasted like blood. Nevertheless, the heroes remained conscious. While Nika's older brothers could be handled, the second-year students, especially Ryan, were a completely different story. Ryan is a competitor, a teacher, and a provocateur at the same time, and his presence in the championship would make things difficult. Suddenly, the door was slammed open violently, and a boy with purple hair walked in, shouting, "We are here to challenge the class that defeated the valley monsters." He asked them, "Am I the strongest?" Chris was surprised and called him an idiot. He extended his hand and told him to leave, calling him annoying. The boy struck a showy pose and asked if he didn't know him, claiming he is the leader of the new generation here. Chris got angry. The boy replied that he needed a lesson in humility. Nika spoke to Chris, asking him to expel him, as he came here to try and steal their strategy. One of them said that Ryan has too much free time. Chris shouted, telling them to calm down, and ordered them not to speak to him. Despite all this, the boy was happy, and it was clear that the students' level was on a different tier. He mocked Chris, asking if he really thought his students could match him. Suddenly, Chris's eyes glowed red. Chris stepped forward, demanding that he respect himself and speak politely to his elders. Ryan laughed, saying he didn't care about titles, but Chris asked him if he really called himself the strongest, adding that it was very laughable. Ryan's body froze in place. This was a different story. Chris coldly replied, telling him that showing off to his fans is what he can control, wasting no time, and ordered him out of here. Ryan said, "This trick won't work on me." He claimed his Emperor Eye reveals true power. Chris mockingly replied that if he possessed the Emperor Eye, he didn't think his eye could see anything at all. At that moment, Chris activated the system, utilized the popular aura, and activated its special effect, the radiant light of the 10th level. Chris transformed himself into a massive light, advanced toward Ryan, and asked him what he could see now. Ryan was blinded and terrified. Chris answered him at that moment, asking if he could shock him, reminding him that he claimed to be very strong. Ryan was terrified, not knowing what to do. Chris tapped him lightly on the head, told him to stop acting, and to return to his classroom. Chris turned away coldly. Ryan was embarrassed by what happened. Next time, he would make him deal with him seriously and take his revenge. He left them and walked away. Chris laughed at him, saying he could bark as much as he wanted. As he walked, Chris watched him, pushing him to become stronger, realizing he was creating enemies for nothing. He vanished from the winter classroom. Eugene came out, called him, and asked to speak with him. Eugene apologized for the past year's rebellion and for not listening. He laughed, noting that he was the only one who could manage against the madness. Chris wondered what he was talking about. Eugene offered that they eat together, shouting, "Of course." Eugene laughed, saying all right, and that he had another offer for him. He handed him a lunchbox, asking him to eat it, stating that he made it himself and that he is a professional cook. Chris refused, saying that the championship rules prevent him, so his choice remains to decline, adding that it might even contain poison. Eugene reassured him that he made it himself and there was no trickery. Chris told him to stop talking so much so they could plan to win this competition. Eugene watched him, feeling surprised, and asked if something was worrying him, suggesting he go to a quiet place to investigate. He found a map to his secret base, an old abandoned dormitory that had been locked for years and visited by no one. Chris was surprised and said that Eugene was talking about a dungeon that exists in the original novel within the academy. This dungeon only opens for people who have never lost once in their lives. Even the hero didn't know how to enter it after his defeat against the Demon King in the past. He wondered how Eugene knew the place. Eugene told him that no one else had found it, and he should follow the map he had. Chris wondered how he got the map. Did he have a connection to the system, or was he like him? Chris ignored him and walked away, saying he didn't understand what he was talking about, and told him to disappear because he was annoying. Eugene laughed, saying he was very cruel, and mentioned he would be gone for a while so they wouldn't see each other, but asked Chris to call him and he would come. He walked away. Chris thought to himself that he was stupid and annoying. At night, Chris stood before the massive door, thinking that since Ryan had joined the powerful third-year class, Class 10 had no chance of winning the championship as a first-year class. They were bound to lose. That's why he needed something to cheat with, which could only come from a dungeon or a quest. When he touched the door, he felt a strange energy and a white light blinded him. He wondered about the dungeon. In this world, the dungeon is known on the network as an unknown area. But as soon as he found himself in a completely empty space, a voice welcomed him, saying it had been waiting for him. Chris looked ahead and found a strange monkey flying in the air. The monkey welcomed him, saying it thought he had forgotten this place and that the rescue was up to him. Chris noted that his memory wasn't complete. He finally asked for someone to help him. Chris was surprised, wondering if this was the Monkey King, a boss in the novel. He wondered why a boss would appear to help him. He called out to the monkey, asking him to explain what was happening here. First, the monkey replied, saying, "That's true," and introduced himself as the one in charge of the system, stating he came here to support him. Chris looked at him with such intimidation that the monkey trembled. Chris thought to himself that he had seen all the misery and trouble he faced, while the trembling monkey asked why he was looking at him like that, asking him to calm down, listen, and telling him that usually in fantasy novels, one meets the system and it appeared to speak with him. Chris interrupted him, asking him to get straight to the point because he was busy. The monkey said he wanted to explain everything and the reason for his presence here, but unfortunately, he couldn't explain because if he told him everything, matters would become complicated. Chris wondered at the words he was hearing, asking himself if he was the author of the novel, unable to comprehend what he was saying. The monkey added that he used a loophole to meet him here because his current abilities weren't enough, and during his distress, he could intervene to support him. Chris said, "So you mean you will grant me a wish?" The monkey said, "Indeed." As soon as Chris heard this, he was overjoyed, thinking to himself that it came at the perfect time. Then he told the monkey, "All right, I want magic," asking him to grant him the ability to use magic. But the monkey refused, saying, "Except for this," explaining that he couldn't do anything for unnominated players like him. Chris got angry, thinking bitterly, "How am I unnominated when they are the ones who dragged me here?" He calmed down and asked, "All right, how about physical strength?" The monkey refused again, saying this was also a bit difficult and not available in their system. Chris got very angry, looked at the monkey, and said in a terrifying voice, "Are you mocking me? Then what is available with you?" The monkey was terrified, gestured with his hands, asked him to calm down, and said he shouldn't get this angry. Chris said, "Fine, give me a tool to help me in my upcoming battles." The monkey thought for a moment and asked, "You mean for your victory in the championship?" Chris said yes. The monkey said, "All right, you have defeated the minimum number of required monsters, and your students are strong. They can manage in this competition, and I will help them." Chris told him to give him the tool that would help him, wanting something that would stay with him for the longest possible period. Suddenly, the monkey's body began to emit a massive light. Chris was shocked, closing his eyes from the intensity of the flash, hoping it would give him a useful tool and make this trip worthwhile. Suddenly, he remembered something important and asked the monkey, "Do you know who Teacher Eugene actually is? Is he a player like me?" The monkey was surprised and asked, "Eugene?" noting that there is a character by that name in their novel. The monkey was shocked and asked, "How do you know this information?" Before he could finish his words, time suddenly rushed forward and he found himself standing in the middle of the championship. The students and a crowd were celebrating and shouting. Chris thought to himself that they won and it was entirely thanks to him, yet they weren't thanking him. Chris was completely dazed about what exactly happened, not understanding. The system screen appeared before him, showing that the quest was successfully executed and the reward was a single point of luck. Chris held his head, screaming internally, realizing that the monkey was late and that the time had come where his class won. He knew this system had caused a disaster. Time passed, and Michael approached him smiling, handed him the trophy, and asked him to accept it, saying they wanted to give it to their teacher. Chris looked at the trophy, feeling that many things were wrong during this period. He took the mana stone, holding the trophy enthusiastically, thinking to himself that it was compensation for the quest reward that he missed out on. Angela began to cry tears of joy. Chris looked at her and asked her not to cry. Angela wiped her tears, saying all right and that they kept working hard. Chris thought that surely Angelina played a big role in this competition, but he didn't remember anything about the past week that flew by. Suddenly, Chris stood up and said he was leaving now. Michael and the others were shocked, asking where he was going, reminding him they were supposed to celebrate the victory together for a bit, but Chris ignored them and walked away, thinking that there was a problem and no time for a creative rest. The system brought a new quest, ordering him to start training immediately. The penalty for failing to face the boss monster with his students was death, and the remaining time was 7 days. Chris was angry. The system was trying to kill him, and he didn't even have a specific location. But maybe this was better for him, as he wanted to find the real Angelina and face this boss anyway. The most important thing due to his time limit was to continue this quest and save Angelina. Chris was surprised by only one thing, unable to believe that Eugene wasn't in this novel. Could he be a player like him, or what? It didn't matter. The target was the real Angelina, the Ice Queen. This season might suggest she is a beautiful character, but in reality, she is a giant mosquito that sucks mana, and he must prepare for this boss instead of occupying his mind with non-existent matters. A few days later, they moved toward the boss. Chris was very happy that they traveled in the light vehicle. He said they were on a different level, warning his students that they were close to reaching the boss's location. Ryan, who came with them after begging, was enthusiastic as usual, saying his Emperor features had many advantages here, and the upcoming battle would be very powerful, with him being the hero. Others watched him, deeply annoyed by this idiot, but they were barely holding themselves back. Chris remembered how Ryan was begging him to join his team, and how he agreed in the end after he lost the championship. He had also been trying to join his ex-class, claiming he had skills. Angelina asked Chris if he was sure everything would go according to the plan. Chris looked at her, knowing her mind was occupied with a million things, and told her that as long as no one made a stupid move, they would succeed. They arrived completely at the kingdom. Chris announced their arrival, stating that this was the kingdom or the dungeon containing the Ice Queen. This dungeon had been abandoned for a long time, and no one had tried to clear it. Originally, this place fought the army of the Demon King, and the trial was extremely difficult as it fought the army and the Queen at the same time. But now, they were only fighting the Queen, and he had also explained her mechanics to them, trusting them. He used the red stone he received from the system, announcing that the Ice Queen was inviting them to her domain. He could sense the mana coming out of this crystal. At that moment, Chris spotted a white mosquito approaching them. Its appearance in reality was terrifying. There wasn't much time, and they had to attack when the opportunity arose. He ordered his students to prepare for battle, but when he looked at them, he was shocked. All the students were in pain, holding their heads, thinking of their families, completely paralyzed. He knew this was a psychological attack. Chris felt this attack heavily, but resisted it, looking at them in frustration, asking how they could be psychologically affected like this when Shara fought the Queen alone. He needed someone who used magic that wasn't affected by psychological attacks. At that moment, Chris pulled out Diana's soul stone, Dulce's sister. Diana's soul stood before him. He spoke to her, apologizing for this sudden deployment, and asked about her specialization in lightning magic. She replied positively. Chris looked at the students, thinking, who among them could be shocked by electricity to wake up. He pointed at Bella and told Diana to give her a proper shock. In the world of the novel, the kinder and gentler a person is, the more dangerous they are. Bella wasn't good at handling magic because she was the kindest and gentlest among them. Diana shocked her with electricity. Bella cried out, "Teacher!" Chris thought that she could compensate with massive magical power. He told Bella to hide her ears, saying it was better for her. Bella was startled and touched her ears. Chris said that while she appeared to everyone as a healer, in reality, she is a half-werewolf. Werewolves are raised on brutality, but she hates violence and is overly kind, which is what makes her a deadly weapon in the final moments. He asked Bella if she could clear the magic from her teammates. Bella said she tried. Chris thought that she wouldn't use her full power unless absolutely necessary. Suddenly, the mosquito began to retreat into the kingdom again. Chris caught sight of a frozen silhouette in an ice mountain. That was the real Angelina. The mosquito had taken Angelina and was trying to flee. Chris said that's why it was observing them, because the mana wasn't enough for its attack, and it wanted to finish it before sucking Angelina's mana. He asked Bella if she was finished, and she replied that only one was left who hadn't woken up. Chris looked at Michael, who was suffering greatly, realizing that Michael was dealing with a psychological attack that wasn't normal. He was the most dangerous one because he had a dark past and he shouldn't enter a berserk state right now. They needed his skill and strength. Chris told Bella to prepare the mental link spell so he could enter his mind and bring him back himself before he went berserk. Bella was terrified, asking if he was serious, warning that something could go wrong and he might remain trapped inside his mind forever. Chris thought about it, wondering if the matter was really that difficult, as he thought it was easy and that Mikey used it normally in the novel. He thought it was simple, but there was no turning back now. He looked at Bella with complete confidence and asked why she doubted his abilities, reminding her that they are students under training and he is their teacher. His duty is to protect them, eliminate this monster, and save Angelina. We have finished the summary of the third part of it. Did the video system show how many days Chris has to live to save Angelina before his quest ends? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Peace.